Well, in the end, you are going to get your votes, barring something unforeseen in Jackson County. Good morning. It is great to be here on a Tuesday, and it's great to walk out the door and it not be single digits. So we are off to a great start this morning, and now we know, and we found this out yesterday right around lunchtime. I know Ray Stevens had the first interview with Sean Smith, Jackson County legislator, who's, by the way, going to be here in about 10 minutes on KCMO, after he flipped his vote from a no on the override of Frank White's veto to a yes. So here's where we stood as of yesterday morning. We were going into the day, and we talked to Manny Abarca, who's also a Jackson County legislator, about whether or not of the 9 Jackson County legislators, they could find 6 votes to override Frank White, the county executive's veto, to then allow an April ballot vote of you, the Jackson County taxpayer, to go out there and decide whether or not you want to extend a 3/8 cent sales tax on behalf of the Royals and the Chiefs. And it didn't look like the votes were going to be there. They needed 6 of 9 votes to override the veto. And then what happened is yesterday, an announcement came down that Sean Smith and Jalen Anderson were the 2 legislators who decided we will ultimately flip our votes. We will go from no on overriding Frank White's veto because we still have questions about the Royals and the Chiefs and what exactly they want to do with the taxpayer monies, to a yes vote. So this was all happening yesterday, and take a listen. Jalen Anderson spoke to the media after the fact, and let me play for you what he said as to why he ultimately flipped his vote.
I've received overwhelming outreach from constituents and the community and stakeholders asking me to allow them to vote on this issue. Therefore, after multiple meetings with the Sports Authority, the Royals, and Chiefs leadership, the concessions we have received thus far, and the response from the community stakeholders, I am determined that this ordinance should move forward and the question of the 3/8 sales tax be on the ballot for April.
Hey, Jalen, blink twice if you need help there, buddy. I mean, my goodness, he's reading that thing like it's a hostage letter. He's like huffing and puffing and struggling to get through his words. And I received all this constituent feedback, and it's time we put this thing on the ballot. Holy cow, it's like someone had a gun to the guy's head, John.
Seemed like a jury foreman or something when they come out and do that.
Except he sounded like he was going to soil himself. There wasn't a very convincing statement from Jalen Anderson on why he flipped his vote. It's like the mob got to him or something. Holy smokes.
You made it sound like he had thousands of phone calls versus like the 20s that Manny had, right?
Manny Abarca said on the show yesterday, I got 26 phone calls or 28 phone calls, 24 in favor of voting, 4 against. Okay, the county's got 767,000 people in it or whatever, but I guess, don't discount the sample size for whatever that's worth. So Jalen Anderson decides, you know what, I'm gonna go ahead, I'm gonna override the veto, and now you get to vote. Now the Royals say that, and this has been the big hang-up for myself and many others. I'm sympathetic to why the Royals want to move. As much as I love the K, I understand why they want to move. That being said, the very least they should provide the taxpayer is a little information on where exactly they want to be. They have given 2 locations, the East Village and, of course, the old Kansas City Star building. And I guess for them, that's good enough for now. They have said by the end of February, they will officially tell the public where they want to be. That way, when you go to vote in April, you'll have an idea of where they're going to be. Yesterday, as I'm watching some of the press conferences going on, Brooks Sherman, who is the COO, no relation to John Sherman, the owner of the Royals, he talked about that after this decision came down.
We think we have a great project for Jackson County, the city of Kansas City, and the region for that matter. And we look forward to sharing those details with you very soon. But again, there's a lot of work to do.
Very soon, like last September, very soon? Or very soon, like in the next couple of days, very soon? Or very soon, like by the end of February, which, by the way, it's a leap year. So good thing for the Royals, they've got an extra day, John.
And working with another 24 hours.
They get and they apparently can use every.
Might use it, right?
They might use it. They might. I mean, they're going to use up every minute, every hour, every day they can, as far as I can tell. So if you're a taxpayer in Jackson County and you're going to go vote on this in April, this is far from a slam dunk. Now, I get it. Extending a tax is not a new tax. That's a good thing. That being said, there is so much angst in Jackson County at leadership. There is so much angst on the issue of taxes in Jackson County right now. I don't think this is the slam dunk that many people assume it will be come April. And by the way, I don't think it should be the slam dunk. I don't. I think we should be allowed to know as a tax-paying public what exactly the Royals and the Chiefs want to do with your monies. I mean, yeah, I understand the name of the game. I understand that this is how these sports stadiums now operate, where there's always public monies involved. I get it. But I still believe these teams, for all the good stuff they do for the community, and certainly there's plenty of that, they still owe it to you to tell you what exactly specifically they are going to do. And if they don't, then you know what? We can do this again next year. There's plenty of time. The lease goes till 2031. And you can tell us next year what you want in exchange for our money.
Lots of moving parts to this story. The urgency for April was the apparent money available at the state level, more readily available perhaps, right? So that's one of the reasons we cover this story. But it all harkens back to our friend Nancy Pelosi saying we've got to pass it to see what's in it.
There is a Pelosi factor to this, isn't there? You got to pass it to see what's in it.
Doesn't seem quite right. Even though there's time between now and the time the question appears on the ballot to find out more information, it's very much pass it to see what's in it.
There's a Pelosi element to this that's just insulting. Like, don't worry. We'll let you know. Don't worry. You're going to find out. In a world where the gap between the so-called elites and Main Street continues to grow and the mistrust between those groups continue to grow, this feels like a very micro, local version of that, where don't worry, you'll find out as soon as you need to know kind of a thing. And by the way, to John's point about the state monies, Mike Parson, the governor of Missouri, delivers his State of the State tomorrow. That's when his budget comes out, and we'll get a better idea of whether or not there is any money in the state budget for the Chiefs and the Royals, as Mike Parson sees it. So one of the many things that we're going to find out this week. Coming up next, one of those folks who did decide to override his veto, or did decide to override Frank White's veto after being on the fence, is Sean Smith. He's going to jump on the show early, and he will be here coming up next on 95.7 FM KCMO. It's going to be a busy morning, so stream us if you have to on the iHeart app. Oh, Joe baby, Joe baby, Joe baby. Man, these polls are just horrific for the guy. We're sitting here on primary day in New Hampshire, and Joe Biden obviously thinks he's just watching the Republican from afar. But Joe Biden should be much more concerned with his own polling and his own chances of being reelected than he should anything involving Republicans today. Good morning. It is good to be here on a Tuesday where it's not below freezing on KCMO Talk Radio, 95.7 FM. And as you get your morning going, as I was doing this morning, as I get ready for work and I get ready to head out the door, I listen to KCMO Talk Radio on our app or on the iHeart app. So thanks for being here. Now, this came out yesterday. This is a Harvard-Harris poll, and it was done less than a week ago. It was done last Wednesday and Thursday. And, I mean, it is horrific for Joe Biden. Everything about it is bad for Joe. He loses to Trump nationally 53-47, 6-point loss to Donald Trump. Meantime, maybe you're thinking to yourself, well, what about a third-party candidate? What about a Robert Kennedy Jr.? What if he joins the race, which he is technically in it. But what if he's actually a legitimate third-party guy? What happens then? Well, Trump wins by more, 44-36 over Biden, RFK at 21. So no matter what, RFK actually makes things worse for Joe Biden under this new Harvard-Harris poll. And why is that? Well, it's about the economy, stupid. The age-old generational line about how you win elections in this country. The perceived strength of the economy remains underwater, with most people saying it's on the wrong track. 63% of Americans in this poll believe the economy is on the wrong track. Think about that. Only 31% think it's on the right track. Yet what do we continue to hear from the administration, from people in power? Oh, the economy's doing great. I mean, look at the weekly jobless claims. Look at some of these numbers. Unemployment's low. The stock, have you seen the stock market? All those things are true, but I'm telling you right now, and as someone who's talked to more small business owners in regular settings and regular folks than Karine Jean-Pierre or Joe Biden have in the last 3 years, I can tell you that's not the case. People are not feeling that here in Kansas City and around much of the country. I told you last week, I was at the event for Sarah DeValcanair and her family, and it was not a political event. It had nothing to do with politics. But, just talking to folks who are small business owners, they're hurting. They're struggling. One guy's got a 70-employee landscaping business, and he's like, if Joe gets reelected, I'm probably just shutting down. My cost of labor is skyrocketing. My cost of doing business, new tires, fixing up my truck just keeps going up, 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 up. He's like, I can't keep up. It's been a terrible few years, and that's just one of many examples that you can find out there. So when you look at these numbers, the U.S. economy on the wrong track, 63% say it's on the wrong track. That's, by the way, the highest since May of 2022. Actually, the highest since, May of 22, which was obviously when we were approaching double-digit inflation numbers, when it was high 60s, 68%, give or take, of people in this poll who said the economy was on the wrong track. So the number was a little bit better back in the late summer, early fall. Only 58% of people thought the economy was on the wrong track. But the guy's underwater by 30 points on whether or not the American people think his economy is on the right track or the wrong track. And not only that, he's coined it Bidenomics. He's embraced. I mean, this is going to go down as the worst political maneuver of the 21st century outside of Obamacare, which is Joe Biden embracing the name Bidenomics as 2/3 of the American people think the economy's on the wrong track. Who thought that was a good idea?
Come on, man.
Oh, so you see these polls, and then you hear this back and forth between Karine Jean-Pierre, the White House press secretary, and Peter Doocy, who is a reporter, White House reporter for Fox News. And take a listen, because obviously the other issue that Joe Biden has is that people just perceive him as being old because, well, hate to break it to you, Joe, you are.
Karine, why do you think it is that more and more people polled feel like over time President Biden is getting less and less mentally sharp?
Which poll is this?
ABC has President Biden's rating for health since May down 5 points, and for mental sharpness down 4 points.
I have to say that's a little confusing for me, because if you look at what this president has done...
You're confused, Karine, about Joe's bad poll numbers? Really? I know, 2 + 2 confuses you, but this is, trust me, not very confusing, Karine. I promise you. But anyway, she's confused.
The last 3 years, historical pieces of legislation, right? When it comes to bipartisan infrastructure deal, many presidents before, like your favorite president, had said that...
Who's my favorite president?
Why don't we let the American people guess? But had said... No. Let me finish. You asked me a question. I'm going to... No.
By the way, how much BS is that? The one guy who is not a simp for this administration in the White House press pool. And the White House press secretary is like, oh, your favorite president, referring, of course, to Donald Trump, because he's the only one that really asks reasonably tough questions. One of the few guys in that room that is not just doing whatever the administration asks to make them look good in the media. And she puts him on blast in the middle of some answer, a legitimate question, by the way, about Joe Biden being old and decrepit. And she chooses that moment to rip the guy and say, well, unlike your favorite president, implying that he's nothing but a Trump sycophant.
No, let me finish. And you'll guess who I'm talking about, who used to say Infrastructure Week, which was a punchline, became a joke. And now we are seeing infrastructure decade because of this president. There's the CHIPS and Science Act, right? There is the Inflation Reduction Act. These are legislation that is going to have a difference for generations to come, right? And so this is something that this president has done. That's pretty sharp for this president to have been able to do that. Let's look at the economy. The economy now, unemployment is under 4%, 14 million jobs created. The economy is in a better place than when it was when he walked in. That's just a fact. That's just the data. And we're seeing consumer sentiment is going up.
I'd say, no, that's not a fact. It's not a fact. I mean, yeah, okay, unemployment's under 4. That's great. That's good. And you didn't create 14 million jobs. Most of those are replaced from pre-COVID. Knock that off. Stop telling the American people that they're too stupid to realize how good you've made the economy for them, John.
Yeah, whenever they state that's a fact or, well, there's no question about it, there is.
Yeah. Yes. There definitely is.
Oh, Trump colluded with, there's no question about that. On false statement and then double down.
Yep. Yeah, you're right. That is a quintessential example of how they BS their way through some of this stuff. In this Harvard-Harris poll, just under half of voters think their financial situation is worsening. The question, would you say that your personal financial situation is improving or getting worse? 46% of 46% say it's getting worse. Only 28% say it's improving. And they're all Hunter Biden and his buddies, by the way, in that 28%. And 26% say basically no change, just as well off as I was. But when you've got 46%, when you've got an 18-point victory for those who claim and believe their personal financial situation is getting worse than improving, you're screwed. I mean, that is not something that is going to help you win re-election. And frankly, if Donald Trump, who, after today, New Hampshire should be the presumptive nominee, if he can't win in these economic times, then you know what? Pack up your bags and call it a career. It ain't going to happen for you. 913-408-7957. I mean, I want to hear from you on a Tuesday morning. As someone who's just a regular worker on Main Street, as you go through these economic times the last 3 years, do you feel like things are getting better, getting worse, staying the same? The data suggests one thing, but anecdotally, I do want to open up the conversation to you as well. 913-408-7957. 913-408-7957. Pete Mundo, 644. Good morning. It's great to be here on KCMO Talk Radio. Some good stuff here on the text line, 913-408-7957, as we approach 7 o'clock on a New Hampshire primary Tuesday here on KCMO Talk Radio. So more polling yesterday coming out that just shows the American people are not in love with this economy. They're not. And I asked you for some examples here on the text line. Pete, as a single guy, my grocery bill went from an average of $50 2 years ago to $75 now. I don't know if that's a week, a month. I assume it's a week, maybe. It's probably not a month. If you get buying $50 a month, then it's a lot of ramen noodles, I guess. I don't know. But either way, I mean, yeah, that's a 50% hike right there. I would love to get out of a grocery store for $75 with 2 kids, but that ain't happening. And I know Mark feels the same way. Now he's got number 3 in tow, 7-week-old baby hanging out. So I feel him. But then again, I say, $75 at the grocery store. Sign me up for that. You'd take that, right, Mark?
Yeah, that's about half of a formula bottle.
Oh, don't.
Sheesh.
I'm coming back to that world again in March. Don't remind me. You're right. Boy. Has inflation hit formula? Is that what you're telling me?
We had never had to use formula before. My wife only used breast milk with the first two.
Okay.
So this is new for us, but it's for the kind that we need, $38.
Woo!
So.
See, we were formula with both of them. And what are you using? Do you know offhand?
It's I can't think of it.
Enfamil?
We did have Enfamil for the first part. We had some free samples.
Yeah.
But we're using a Walmart brand now.
Oh, okay.
It helps with gassiness.
Gotcha. All right.
So it's a special kind.
Well, you got two older sisters, 11 and 8, giving you crap all day. I'll be a little gassy too, I guess.
Yeah.
So understandable there. Meantime, also on the text line, Pete, good morning. I'm a private security contractor, basically making the same amount of money since Trump was in office. I was able to live right around $2,000 every 2 weeks. Now I'm having to work overtime, and $3,200 is not cutting it. I'm working and earning more, and I'm actually buying less. I'm constantly paycheck to paycheck right now. That is another example on the text line, 913-408-7957. I mean, these are just some of the texts that we're seeing and rolling through here on KCMO and sharing with you from people who are just living their day-to-day lives here around Kansas City and dealing with this stuff. And it creates an enormous opportunity for Donald Trump. All he's got to do is talk about two things. Well, let's say three. Unity, the economy, and immigration. Not necessarily in that order, but that's it. That's what he's got to do, and he's got himself a windfall of voters coming his way, and I think by his standards, a landslide, which isn't necessarily saying much. I mean, in today's political climate, 2-3 points is a landslide, but for a guy who has won a race by a very tight margin and lost a race by a very tight margin, I'm sitting here and I'm saying to myself, just don't screw this up, man. Please, for all of our sakes, do not screw this up. And that means discipline. That means staying on message. That means talking about the issues and the things that people care about. They don't want to talk about the past. They don't want to talk about 2020. They want to talk about their issues right now. That's what they want to see addressed. And that's what they want you to care about. They want you to care about them. They don't want to expect themselves to have to care about you. That's it. And I've been very encouraged by Trump, and I've noted that. I mean, after his victory speech in Iowa last week, I thought he was very much about, bringing people together and talking about how to unify folks. This is part of what he said after his victory in Iowa last week.
Crowd. And I really think this is time now for everybody, our country, to come together. We want to come together, whether it's Republican or Democrat or liberal or conservative. It would be so nice if we could come together and straighten out the world and straighten out the problem.
I just can't help but laugh sometimes. Even when he's being dead serious, it just cracks me up. There's nothing like it, and there never will be anyone like it. Oh, gosh.
Think of the menu served.
That's the kind of stuff we need more of. If he wins tonight in New Hampshire, then you know what? I hope we get a speech very similar to it, because Nikki Haley will be done. She'll be toast, and this thing will be in the Republican primary, game, set, match. It's going to be closer in New Hampshire, but, if Trump gets this thing by 5+ points, then it's effectively over. There is no path for Nikki Haley in South Carolina or anywhere else for that matter. So then it is time to coalesce, to move on, and to start thinking about November. So we'll see how things play out today. It was interesting. I don't know how much of you care about this, but the first votes, every state kind of has its little quirky thing that they do. And in New Hampshire, the first primary ballots are cast at a place called Dixville Notch. It's in northern New Hampshire, and the first 6 votes of the New Hampshire primary, every single cycle, come in from this place called Dixville Notch, New Hampshire. And they do it at midnight on primary day. And it's a 64-year-old tradition up there in Dixville Notch. And there were 6 votes cast in Dixville Notch, New Hampshire. And all 6 votes went to Nikki Haley. So I don't think that's a sign of things to come. I'm not predicting a Nikki Haley win, but it is always interesting. It's kind of one of those quirky things that happens in presidential primary years, and a place like Dixville Notch, New Hampshire, takes a lot of pride in that. I've been up there a couple of times in my life. It is a beautiful part of the country, and we'll see how the rest of the day plays out. But this is Nikki's last stand today. A lot of surprising school closures this morning. Looks like it's mostly on the Missouri side, so just something to keep an eye out for this morning. A lot of up north as well, so I'm guessing it's due to that refreezing. It was a little slippery, but I don't think John and Mark were slipping down the driveway like yesterday. Both guys almost broke their hips getting into the office.
Yeah, it was all wet at my house. There was one roundabout that was slick that I kind of skidded through a little bit.
How about you, John? You do okay this morning, my man?
Worst was in the parking lot out here.
Yes.
Right.
It was dicey in the parking lot.
Now, the guys are making it around. That's not to put them down. It's just that yesterday it was fine. Today, it's the refreeze, and so they're just now getting going out here.
Yeah, I had a little slip and slide out here. I thought about just doing a full face palm, and then calling up the jungle law goober or whatever and doing something like that. But then I'm like, I like my job. I like the people I work with, so I don't want to deal with folks like that. But I did think about it for a split second. I'm like, gosh, I could just fall right on my ass and start calling up jungle law. Roar! My daughters love that. As he's flying through the jungle, meeting tigers. I mean, my goodness. That industry, man, clean that industry up. You want to talk about why your insurance rates keep going up? Guys like that, okay? I don't know about you. Car insurance, homeowners insurance, it keeps skyrocketing, and we know why. Okay, Frank White, the Jackson County executive. He got overridden yesterday on his veto. Now, no one's been more critical in this town of Frank White with a microphone in front of their face than me. But I thought that when Frank Wright, I'm thinking about the former Colts coach, Frank Reich.
Reich, yeah.
Yeah. When Frank White overrode decided to veto the bill from the Jackson County legislature, I actually thought he had some decent points. He said, in large part, we need more transparency from the Royals and the Chiefs as to what they want to do. And once we get that all figured out, we can talk about moving forward with a vote. I thought he had some decent points. And I say that as somebody who is not looking to give Frank White the benefit of the doubt based on how he's been so naive and he's stuck his head so far in the sand over this property tax debacle. And it looked like he was going to have the votes to hold on that veto. But then yesterday, a couple of legislators, led by Jalen Anderson and Sean Smith, flipped their votes and decided, no, we're going to override Frank's veto, and we will allow Jackson County voters to go ahead and vote on extending the 3/8-cent sales tax for the Royals and the Chiefs come April. So Frank White spoke to the media briefly yesterday, and here's part of what he had to say.
We don't know where the stadium's going to go for the Royals. We don't know what the Chiefs' plans are for renovation. We don't know what the Chiefs' plans are for keeping their offices and their workout facility, training facility in Jackson County.
All right, so those are all reasonable questions. Now, Sean Smith said on this show earlier this morning, he was on at 6:15, he said that we'll know well before the vote in April where the Royals want to be and what the Chiefs' plans are for upgrades. But he did note any talk of like a roof for Arrowhead is not really in the conversation. We're talking about upgrades to the stadium itself, concrete, things like that, stuff that the average fan like you and I are not going to notice when we go to a game. But there are, you're talking about a 50-year-old stadium at this point that does need upgrades and does need improvements. And that's probably the bulk of what Arrowhead is looking at. The bigger questions remain for the Royals. Where are you going to be? What's the plan? Now, Sean Smith also alluded to the fact that the Royals can't necessarily say much right now, and he said this yesterday on Ray Stevens' show right after the news broke. in part because of real estate deals getting done. Now, that tells me, and if I'm reading between the lines, I think the Kansas City Star building is suddenly the front runner. Because the East Village has been a site and a consideration for years now. If it was the East Village, that thing would have been done by now. The fact that it's taking more time, the fact that we're still talking about real estate deals tells me that the Kansas City Star building is a front runner, is a very serious consideration, and may ultimately be the location that the Royals end up picking. Because that's the only reason that we would still be dragging our feet talking about real estate deals. These Village sites, I mean, that thing has been in the mix since we started this conversation. The Kansas City Star building, the old Kansas City Star building, is fairly new to the conversation. And there are people I've tried to get on the show who have ties to the Kansas City Star building who have told me that suddenly they can't really talk, publicly at least. So once again, just kind of putting the pieces of the puzzle together, that would suggest to me that suddenly we've got a situation where that Star building is very much a serious contender. And if it is, that's great because it loops in power and light. But here's what I still don't understand that I would love to get an answer from the Royals on. The whole purpose of you moving was to build an entertainment district, to make money off beer and food sales and commercial real estate and all these different things, even though commercial real estate is a dead industry. I mean, commercial real estate may kick off the next recession. It is in the toilet. So I don't know why building commercial real estate is a good idea in this economy, but I'll let the billionaires figure that out. But why do you need to go there and build an entertainment district when the power and light district is a stone's throw away and loses money every year? That is a question that, if they are going to move to that location, has got to be answered. I can't help but think that this letter that was put out late Friday played a big role in suddenly some legislators deciding that they were going to flip their vote and override Frank White's veto and put the Royals and the Chiefs sales tax extension on the ballot. This is a letter that came out, it came out Sunday? Oh, this was yesterday morning, January 22nd, excuse me. And it was from Joe Reardon, president and CEO of the Kansas City Chamber. Who else was on here? Kathy Nelson, KC Sports Commissioner, Gwen Grant, Urban League, Bob Kendrick, Negro Leagues Baseball Museum, Tim Cowden, Emmett Pearson, Community Builders of Kansas City CEO. So all these different people put out this letter yesterday saying, on behalf of a collaboration of business and civic organizations, we encourage the Jackson County Legislature to take the necessary steps to ensure residents will have the opportunity to vote on the proposed extension of the 3/8 cent sales tax on April 2nd. We appreciate the diligent negotiations on both sides. Commitments, concessions, and progress have all been made. We firmly believe the time has now come to let the voters exercise their collective voice. There will be plenty of time to resolve finer points between now and April 2nd. I'm not sure if, finding out where the damn stadium's going to be is a finer point. A finer point is like what kind of toilets you're going to put in the stadium. I wouldn't call where the stadium's going to be a finer point, guys. Just got to dot some of the I's and cross the T's on the finer points, like where the heck the damn stadium's going to be. Oh, that's a great line. It's wildly insulting, but it's actually pretty funny if you just don't get insulted by it.
I think it goes to your theory that it's probably the KC Star site, though.
I think it is. I think that's why they can't say it, because they're still negotiating that, because it was a late addition to what's going on downtown. It was all about East Village, then it was potentially about North Kansas City, and then it came back downtown, and now it's about the old Star building, which is where I think it ultimately is going to be. But I just wonder, listen, there's a lot of power, there's a lot of money in the people and organizations that signed this letter. And listen, if you're somebody who wants to have a political future, there are people within these organizations who you're going to need to help you get elected to whatever you want to get elected to. And that's why, I heard Jalen Anderson yesterday, who's one of the county legislators, who announced that he was going to override the veto after saying he was not going to override the veto. It literally sounded like a hostage tape. I shared it on Twitter, and it came from Fox 4, and I wrote on Twitter with the video that I'll play for you here in a second. Hey, Jalen Anderson, blink twice for help, buddy. Blink twice for help. Take a listen. He sounds nervous. It doesn't sound natural as he explains why he flipped his vote.
I've received overwhelming outreach from constituents and the community and stakeholders asking me to allow them to vote on this issue. Therefore, after multiple meetings with the Sports Authority, the Royals, and Chiefs leadership, the concessions we have received thus far, and the response from the community stakeholders, I am determined that this ordinance should move forward and the question of the 3/8 sales tax be on the ballot for April.
Wow, very convincing there, Jalen. Jeez, either he really had to hit the head, or he couldn't read his own handwriting, or I don't know. But that was not a guy who sounded strong in his conviction as to why he suddenly changed his vote. Sounds like a guy that worried some of the financing for future political endeavors may be drying up if he didn't vote the right way. 913-4087-95.7 here on KCMO Talk Radio. Jonathan's in Kansas City. Go ahead, Jonathan. Good morning.
How's it going?
It's going well, my man. What's happening?
So this whole talk, we'll have an answer by the end of February. We should have had an answer by now. We should have had it a long time ago. The problem is, though, in Missouri, voting starts 6 weeks before an election. That would be February 20th. That's 6 Tuesdays before that first Tuesday after the first Monday in April. And as you're probably aware, more people are voting early now. And so I would argue, if I was the city leaders, I'd say, no. That's not acceptable. If we're going to be in the modern age where people are voting early, you need to have an answer sooner than that.
Well, voting starts actually February 16th. That's when absentee voting begins. And listen, they had an opportunity to do that yesterday, and they decided, nope, we're going to override Frank White's veto, and this thing's going to be on the April ballot, and hopefully we find out by the end of February what exactly the Royals want to do and where they want to be. The good news for the Royals is it's a leap year, so they've got an extra day to figure this thing out, Jonathan, if they need it. On the text line, this is from Chad in Independence. Pete, Kansas City was here before the Royals and the Chiefs got here. They'll still be here if the Chiefs and the Royals are gone. People are tired of high ticket prices, high-priced food, and parking. Well, here's the thing. They're not. Been to a Chiefs game this year? Place is packed. I mean, as someone who just is willing to let the free market decide, they're not sick of the prices. Now, listen, it helps when your team is winning Super Bowls, but I'm just saying they're not sick of the prices. And I do think there's an inherent value of being a pro sports town. I'm not one of these people, and I love my friends at the Show Me Institute. They're the Missouri-based think tank that join us on Wednesdays. And they are dead set against any public dollars going to sports teams. There's no return on the investment, they claim, and I get all that. But I do think there's an inherent value on being a pro sports town that you cannot put a price tag on. There's no doubt the Chiefs and Patrick Mahomes have brought millions, if not billions of dollars of direct or indirect marketing dollars to Kansas City. I'm not one of these, don't give them a dime, don't extend the sales tax. I would be open, and frankly, if I was a Jackson County voter, I would vote yes on extending the sales tax. But I just think it's been insulting how this has been handled from the team perspective of agree to put something on the ballot before we even tell you where exactly we want to be. But I've said it. I would vote yes on extending a tax. Not a new tax, but extending the current tax that exists. But two things can be true at the same time. I can agree with that while also being of the belief that the Royals, who have preached transparency for going on 18 months now on this, have lacked a lot of it. Well, this is it. This is Haley's last stand. As New Hampshire, the voting is underway there. It's the second primary. But, if Nikki Haley can't hit the high 40s in New Hampshire, a state where independents can vote in primaries, they can pick the primary they want to vote in. And if she can't win in a much more moderate state, or at least come close to Trump, then there's just no point. South Carolina's a month away. You're going to do this whole thing for another 30 days and act like there's some primary at stake here? Because as far as I can tell, there isn't. And I wish that weren't the case, not because I have, an issue with Trump being the nominee, but listen, for people that do what I do, a long, dramatic primary is good for business. But I'm not going to make something up and try to, pretend something's happening that's not happening. There's not a lot of juice in this primary. And I believe that today in New Hampshire, Trump's probably going to win by double digits. And if he wins by double digits, I'm not doing a naked lap over it, all right? I'm not going that far. I haven't studied the polling that much. My naked lap days are over, especially with this ice. I can't imagine Mark and I doing a little naked trot around corporate woods with this ice. Although it'll be a good way for a lawsuit, potentially.
It's a good way to test your frosticles.
Yeah.
Boom, boom, boom.
There you go.
Oh, jeez. It is a good way to test them, John. But, listen, we've seen enough of that for a while. So I still get trolled on social media with some of the people who, I can't imagine somebody who isn't my wife. Frankly, I'm not sure she wants one or has one, having a half-naked photo of me on their phone readily available. But do understand there are people in this town who post a basically nude photo of me from when I did a naked lap a year and a half ago after the Sharice Davids win over Amanda Atkins, who just posted on social media once in a while to troll me. And I'm like, you realize this makes you look bad, that you have a screenshot of a mostly nude photo of me on your phone. What does that say about you?
Yeah, that's an obsessed person right there.
That takes a certain level of commitment to just have that readily available. Heck, I spend 10 minutes on my phone. Where's that picture of Claire from 2.5 years ago that I really liked of us in our Chiefs gear? And I got to spend 10 minutes scrolling through my phone looking for it. Was that October of 22? Was it November? When was that? And these guys, within 5 minutes of me posting something on social media, they got a half-nude photo of me ready, on a whim.
Your milkshake brings all the girls to the yard. So,
I think it's mostly dudes, as far as I can tell. The trolls are mostly of the male persuasion. At least
seemingly, anyway.
Seemingly, yeah. Very good point. So, I don't know. It's weird.
He's a sick guy.
Yeah, it's a weird group of characters out there. Now, that being said, this primary today is Nikki Haley's last chance. Yesterday, Nikki Haley was doing an event. And, this is how it goes in politics. You get some hecklers out there. Well, she got heckled, and here's what it sounded like.
But you know what? We've got a lot on the line here. We really do. And you look at what's happening in this election. Yes.
Will you marry me?
Are you going to vote for me? Get out of here.
And then the guy says, I'm voting for Trump. And then she's like, get out of here. It's that kind of stuff where you listen to it, you see it, and you're like, are we really at that point in this campaign where people are, screaming, marry me? Just go away. Can we not do that anymore? I don't know. Is it too much to ask? I know it's silly season in politics, but now I got guys yelling about whether or not, Nikki, will you marry me? Marry me, Nikki. Meantime, the biggest question remaining as far as I can tell is who's going to be Trump's vice president. He was asked that question on Fox News yesterday, and here's what he told Brett Baer, the non-answer answer.
You said in our town hall that you had an idea, or you might have already decided about your VP pick. When do you think you're going to make that?
Well, it's never really had that much of an effect on an election, which is an amazing thing. Both election and primary, it's never really had much of an effect. I may or may not release something over the next couple of months. There's no rush to that. It won't have any impact at all. The person that I think I like is a very good person. pretty standard. I think people won't be that surprised. But I would say there's probably a 25% chance it would be that person.
Is Senator Tim Scott on the list now?
No, he's a great guy. You know, he endorsed me. There's an example. Nikki comes from South Carolina. Tim Scott is from South Carolina. But if you look, the governor, great governor, another senator, Lindsey, we happen to like Lindsey. But Henry McMaster knows her very well. He endorsed me.
All right, that's good. That's good. We definitely don't like Lindsey, by the way, but that's a story for another day. Bill O'Reilly said on this show last week he thinks it's going to be Sarah Huckabee Sanders. Go with a woman. That makes sense. Trump needs that, I believe. There's this big push for Vivek Ramaswamy. It's never going to be Vivek Ramaswamy. There's no chance. Because one thing Trump wants is loyalty. He respects loyalty. Vivek showed up 7 seconds ago and comes off like a total shyster. And Vivek wants the spotlight. Vivek soaks up and likes the spotlight. Trump doesn't want that. Trump wants the spotlight. Trump's about the spotlight. He does not want someone who's going to show him up looking for the spotlight. There's no way he picks Vivek. And by the way, I've been saying that for 2 weeks. And I woke up on Sunday morning to some guy cursing me out in a direct message on my Instagram page, like my personal Instagram at Pete Mundo. I wake up and, I'm scrolling through some different things. And I got this guy writes, "Eat, bleep, and die. You have poor judgment," for me saying I don't want Vivek as the VP. I'm like, easy does it, buddy. Relax. And by the way, I guarantee you I'll be proven right on it not being Vivek. I might bet a naked lap on that, but I probably shouldn't. So I think Sarah Huckabee Sanders will be the way to go. Trump's like loyalty, and a female would help him as well.